right, welcome, welcome. Good morning, Sunday Assembly. You know how you can tell that's an old clip? There was barely any cell phones in the crowd, yet it was still HD quality video. So that's amazing. All right, welcome to a special edition of Sunday Assembly online, where pants are optional. Thank you for joining us. If you're not wearing pants, good for you. Fight the man. All right, so most of you know who we are, but we'll just go over it anyway. We are a secular organization that celebrates life, because that's what it's all about. We like to live better, help often, and wonder more. Those are pretty much the three best commandments I think we should all live by. Living better, we aim to provide inspiring, thought-provoking, and practical ideas that help people to live the lives they want to lead and be the people they want to be. If you can't agree with that, please check out now. Help often. Assemblies are communities of action, building lives of purpose, encouraging us all to help anyone who needs it to be support each other. And wondering more. Hearing, talking, and singing is one. Listening to readings and even playing games helps us to connect with each other, and awesome world we live in. So it is a great world we live in. Now we got the fundamentals out of the way. Let's do another song. All right, can everybody hear me? Yes, thumbs up. Okay. So I'm getting messages that we're having audio issues with the video, so we're just going to skip through that. Hopefully we'll get that resolved eventually. Anyway, so life happens. Everyday life happens. I'd like to start off. I recently did a home construction project I mentioned earlier, but those who weren't here for it. I'm not a construction type of a person. I'm more of a computer nerdy person, but I do like watching YouTube videos that'll teach you how to be a construction person. And according to YouTube, this project was leveled medium difficulty, which for me meant it was really hard. I took out my old sliding patio door and I put in a new one. And we had some really strong rain a couple of days ago. I think it was on Friday, and nothing leaked. So it works. Yay. That's my life happens. If somebody would like to add something, if you want to announce something, I guess raise your hand. There's a little icon there. All right, CJ, what do you got going on?
Well, many of you probably know that I foster kittens, and my last bunch has been here for a while. It's been like almost a month now, but they're finally going to get spayed and neutered on Wednesday and go back to the shelter so I can get new, tinier kittens again.
Awesome. All right, John, what do you got going on?
Yeah, we saw announcements and we've been watching the progress over the past several months of the palace getting closer to coming down. We went, so this is a life happens. This is a overall good thing. My oldest son is a very skilled drone flyer, and we took the drone and flew it through the palace about a week ago before they brought it down. So that was really cool. We were lucky enough not to hit any wires, and because there's a bunch of wires hanging down. And right at the end, we started to lose signal, and that was a big concern because the drone is pre-programmed so that if it loses signal, it automatically returns to home by flying straight up to get above obstacles and then coming over to home. So losing signal while you're underneath inside that palace would have been instant disaster. But we got it out, and then we went to see the demolition yesterday and got good drone footage of that too. So overall, that's pretty cool.
That does sound cool. I'd actually love to see that because I'm also a drone enthusiast. And if you did lose power and yours just goes straight up and home to you, you're a lot luckier than my friend's son, who was flying it over a lake, lost power, and went right into the lake.
Right into the lake, sure enough.
It was like a $600 drone too.
Yeah. So yeah, we're lucky to get nothing fancy for the drone. It's just a Hudson, but yeah, we got good footage. My wife set up a camera nearby across 24 there, across Lapeer Road, and got good footage of it too. The funniest thing is hers is close enough that that you get good audio, and because the drone doesn't have any audio, and the shock waves hit, bam, 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 and the car alarm starts going off from a car next to us, which is funny, and then the camera actually falls over from the shock waves.
Awesome.
I
Okay.
live right by there, and I thought it was thunder, and I was so confused because there was no rain, and I was like, where's this thunder coming from? It was so loud.
All right, Austin, you got something, Victoria?
Yeah, just this weekend I was up to my dad's estate with my mom and my friend Rick, also Rick. And yeah, this is like basically the third time that I've brought people with me, and we've been trying to just organize the house. So we're gonna have an estate auction, not at a sale, but an auction next weekend. So we'll see how it goes. Hopefully we can get everything out of there. But
All right, good luck. Good luck. That is definitely a big project. I remember when my grandparents passed away, they lived in a small little apartment, and it took my dad, my brother, and I about 2 weeks to clean that out. We thought, where did they get all this stuff from? They lived on Social Security. How? Where? But walk around to garage sales, you pick up knickknacks here and there, and yeah, I know exactly what you're going through. All right, anybody else with life happens? Care to share? Not seeing anybody. All right. We got a monthly reading, so we'll see. Well, hopefully this video will.
Confession from my third collection of poetry, Felon. Confession. If I told her how often I thought of prison, she would walk out of that door that's led just as much to madness as any home we desired. She would walk out and never return. My employers would call me a liar and fire me. My dreams are not all nightmares, but this history has turned my mind's landscape into a gadroon. I do not sing. Have lied for so many months now that truth harbingers loss. Sleeping beside her when a memory is holding me tight, as she did before the lies turned everything into a battle. I once gasped and lurched and tried to strangle the pillow she placed beneath my head. Imagine me explaining that to her, while still shivering like a panicked and broken man. I stopped believing in God long before then. But that night, when outside there was no light but darkness, I swore something of what inevitable is touched me. My children slept with their light on. I walked to that still lit room. My son was asleep and his brother draped over his body as if he were the pillow. The way he loved his brother was everything my time in the cell denied me. If I told my woman that, she would want to know if I thought I deserved all that lost. Her mother wonders why I won't let it go and hold on to the happiness in his life we have. But how do I explain that outside on nights like this is where I first learned just how violent I might be? That I think of prison because in all these years I still can't pronounce the name of my victim.
All right. Well, one of the classics. They don't make music like that anymore. Not even close. I get into arguments with my daughter about the radio stations we put on in the car because she wants to listen to whatever garbage is on that's pop, and so the simple solution was here's an MP3 player. It's got a tuner in it. Listen to whatever the hell you want because I can't stop you. It's an easy compromise. So, on to the main event. Today, Rick is going to be talking about criminal justice reform. So, switch you over. All right, Rick, you're on.
Afternoon, everyone. How you doing? Can everyone hear me? Okay. So my name's Rick Speck. I do community engagement for Safe and Just Michigan. I'm also formerly a community organizer for the ACLU of Michigan, which is when I think the last time I was privileged to be able to present to this group. And prior to that, I did direct service work with formerly incarcerated folks returning home from prison, specifically to the city of Detroit, through a nonprofit that I helped co-found with two other formerly incarcerated men. So with that said, I unfortunately served 3 terms in prison. The last one ended 6 years ago, May. So happy to be home in the community for 6 years now. And when I took this job at Safe and Just Michigan, I did it because the work we do here is nonpartisan, so it doesn't matter what side of the aisle or not that you're on, but we only do criminal justice reform. So even though I still volunteer and lend support to the ACLU for a variety of other issues, the cool thing about working here is, like I said, this is what I get to do all day. This is my passion. You know, I left a lot of really good and talented men and women behind when I came home. So the work I do is, to help, number one, keep our community safe, but number two, to create a better community for men and women to return home to, something that's welcoming, more holistic than what we have going on. And that's a goal of Safe and Just Michigan as well. And so it lined up with a lot of my personal mission and vision. So it was an easy transition for me. What I'd like to do today is spend about 5 minutes on each one of these topics. And if you have any questions, I think there is a raise your hand feature, right, where I'll be able to see that. And, feel free though during the presentation. I really don't, I'd much rather have a conversation than a presentation. So please ask questions, interrupt me, stop me. That's perfectly fine. I prefer it that way. The first thing we'll talk a little bit about is Clean Slate. So Clean Slate is a package of, Clean Slate is what we're hoping to be an automated way for folks to have their records expunged. It's a very costly process. And the way it is currently, it's very restrictive. One of the biggest issues I probably have with our current expungement system is you can have 1 felony removed and or 2 misdemeanors. And oftentimes, when people make poor decisions and commit crimes, there's multiple charges that will arise from that one incident. And so what happens is, well, oftentimes you're overcharged to begin with. So there's charges on top of charges that most of the times could never be proved, but, successfully scare the hell out of people into saying, yeah, sure, I'll plead to this because that's so bad, right? And unfortunately, that's a tactic. And then folks say, okay, well, they're charging me with 6, so I'm going to plead to 2. I guess that's not bad. But the problem is that second one now makes you ineligible, so now you'll be a felon for the rest of your life, which will hinder you in employment, which will hinder you in education, which will hinder you in housing, especially considering what those crimes may be, right? They have different degrees, for which people are biased against. I did a lot of work with employers getting folks hired, and some people be like, I'll take anybody but somebody that's committed a violent crime. I'll take anybody except for somebody that's committed a sexual crime in nature. And it was varying degrees based on, what they believed, right? Like who they felt was a danger regardless. And so a lot of this will create a way for the One Bad Night Act. so to speak, right? So you made this poor choice that led to several convictions. Well, this package could lead for folks after 7 years of coming home and living, a crime-free life to have that taken off their record. And there's a whole package of bills that's going through. It just was voted from the Senate Judiciary out, and so now it'll go back to the legislator, and because there's some changes, and so we're very hopeful that this will pass, but it sets up, like I said, automatic expungement. It creates the process for folks that were convicted of marijuana charges here, which we all know today marijuana is legal in the state of Michigan, yet we still have men and women, serving 5, 10, 15, 20 years for marijuana offenses. So also creates some expungement for people who have driving offenses, right? I think I shared this before. About half of the county jails prior to COVID, the folks that were being held there, most of them were, 50% of them were being held there for traffic violations, right? For not being able to pay, essentially for being too poor to, number one, pay your ticket, and then number two, pay your bail. So now you're in jail, number three, and you're charged, and you're costing the average taxpayer about $150 a day for us to house you there for maybe $100 ticket. So there, that doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't know how those things keep us safer, but I guess that's a bigger conversation. So what this does, though, is this creates a pathway, and all of this is done based on research and evidence, best practices, evidence-based information, because we know that after 7 years of being home, in most instances, or 10, that I'm no more likely to commit a crime than any of you on this Zoom today that have never committed an offense, right? So after 7 to 10 years, the likelihood is the same. The only difference is I'm hamstrung on my convictions and where I can be housed, and that's not setting folks up for success. That's not setting the community up for a successful reintegration. So these are things that we believe, number one, improve the lives of those that are impacted and affected, but also for the community, because it creates more opportunity for folks. Any questions before we move on? Sure, go ahead, Anthony.
So the law is that you have to wait 7 years after you're released from prison to apply to get your conviction expunged, correct?
Yes, after, 2 years, or I believe it's 5 years after you're off parole. Most paroles are 2 years, some are 12 or 18 months. So it does vary a little, but that's a general number, yeah. So.
What about the people that get a felony, but they're not sent to prison? They just get probation.
Same thing. You have to successfully complete the probation, as it were, and then you have to have a period of, and depending on the crimes, not all crimes, sex offenses and murder is still, and I believe armed robbery are still carve-outs on this bill. So those three categories of three populations of people will not be eligible at this time for any kind of expungement.
Okay. Well, I was asking because I know somebody who's right now on probation for child abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And where would that fall for him?
You know what? I'm not exactly sure, because there are, and when I look up the bill, there are specific crimes that are carved out. We call them carve-outs. I'm not sure if that would fall in there. I'm guessing it may. If I had to guess, I would say it probably does, because A, it involves assaultive, and B, it involves a child. So many times, and a lot of times that when folks think of a sex offense, we'll automatically go to, either rape or abuse of a child, but there's so much in between. Like, it's, you have the Romeo and Juliet, so and even those cases are excluded. So but it's a good first step, I think, and if we can show how this will continue, and this This set of bills in the state of Michigan will affect literally over 100,000 of our citizens. Over 100,000 people could automatically be eligible to have a felony taken off, like right out of the gate. So yeah, it's really a great package. CJ?
Yes, I've been sending postcards to my representative. So would this be something that I should contact my senator about to let her know that I'm in support of her voting for it?
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. Any other questions? I can't see the whole row of folks, so no? Okay.
If your thing is like a little column, there should be a little arrow at the bottom. If you click that, you'll scroll through.
Anyone else have any questions before I? Okay, all right. Okay, so task force recommendations. I guess first I should talk a little bit about what the task force is. So Governor Whitmer put together a task force of legislators, criminal justice reform advocates, formerly incarcerated folks, academics, prosecutors, you name it. They were there from the community all the way across the state. And they held these listening sessions, and they went to Grand Rapids, Muskegon, they went Traverse City, multiple times to Detroit, Saginaw. They went all over the state trying to listen to the community in relation to where did they see the flaws, where did they see the problems in relation to pretrial jails and pretrial incarceration. And it was an amazing task force. Many folks gave testimony, including myself. And they came away with 18 great recommendations, which could transform the way we do things here in Michigan for our jails. And it applies in a way that these could be transferred into laws, to legislation. That's the hope, that these 18 recommendations are now going to become basically 18 reforms that will become laws. You know, it ends the practice of suspending driver's license unless it's directly related to a driving offense, right? Driving safety. You know, who would have thought that you'd lose a license for something not even related to driving? Why? Why we thought that was a good idea here in Michigan. If I had to guess, it's because we're one of the most punitive states in the country. I mean, I'm comfortable saying that. So that's probably why this seemed like a good idea at the time. You know, I think the last time I spoke with folks here, it was about a great deal of it was about cash bail. You know, cash bail in a nutshell just doesn't keep us safe. You know, what's the difference if Anthony has $500 to get out and I don't? Well, it's the same. How is like the community any safer from Anthony than me just because they got $500 from him? Right? Like, I don't get how money translates to safety, that bail translates to safety, especially when we're looking at a lot of these low-level offenses. And so what it does is oftentimes just exacerbates the reasons why people make poor choices, why people break the law. You know, then you take away their home, their job, their vehicle, because they just spent a few days, weeks, months in jail. And again, at a premium of, you know, $150 a day, it doesn't make us safer. But it also started more conversation about treatments, about specialty courts for veterans, for substance use issues, all these different things that where people can be treated versus just punished and incarcerated and put in a cage.
Did we lose Rick?
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe so.
Yeah, it looks like
I
it.
try to take one thing away good
Oh,
from
they're-
COVID. What happened?
You were
you
frozen for about 10 seconds.
Oh,
Remind
okay.
to take 15 seconds and continue.
So what I was saying is I guess the one good takeaway from this COVID is a lot of jails have been depopulating based on that, right? Folks that are being held on these tickets, they're saying, well, okay, we're gonna let them go. Folks that are very close to already getting out and completing their sentence. So like in Macomb County, for example, I think that jail typically held 900 folks pre-COVID on average. I think it holds up to 1,200, but on average they had around 900. And a few weeks ago they had that number down to like 313 or something. 600 people were released amongst this COVID. There was also where they were going to put on there for a new jail to be built, a new what's it called, millage or something, right? And so amongst COVID, they decided not to do that, that resources may be needed somewhere else, which was huge. I mean, like I said, if there's any good takeaways from this, it's that we learned that we can reduce the jail population, and people are still safe. Like there's not all this craziness going on. People aren't being, broken into, crime isn't going up, and people are actually home, and where they should be, to fight these charges, because the reality of it is in jail, about 70% of those people have one thing in common. They're all innocent until proven guilty. The problem is they're all also being held in jail, and that's just not the way to afford somebody an opportunity to defend themselves, right? So when we talk about COVID, we have to talk about truth in sentencing. So truth in sentencing is a statute from the tough on crime era. Basically what it means is you have to do 100% of your time. There is no good time. There is no disciplinary time that you can earn. In my case, I was sentenced to 15 years as a minimum, 24 years as a maximum. I served every day of 15 years. I did not get one day off for anything good that I did. Any accomplishments, any of the classes that I took, any of the classes that I taught. Although it was personally rewarding, I wasn't rewarded in any other way, that would have affected me getting home to my family and my community sooner. So truth in sentencing, the one thing that people don't talk about until now is the fact that in that legislation, it's specific requirement that you have to be confined in a secure facility to serve the minimum sentence, which means what? That you can't go home to community placement, to a halfway house, to a substance use program that's in the streets where you could go there for your last year and get this treatment and come home and have the support. You can't do that under truth in sentencing. And so the other problem that it poses is there's people that get their parole 5 to 6 months generally before your out date, before you're scheduled to go home. You'll see the parole board get that decision, and now you do what? You wait for months upon months upon months to go home. Well, when we're in the middle of a pandemic and these folks are going home, this law here prohibits them from exiting stage left a little early, right? To go even home on a tether, because it's specific in this law, the language that they have to be in a secure facility. We at Safe and Just believe that there is a workaround for the governor that she chooses to ignore through these executive powers that she's been granted, these emergency powers. But again, that's a longer conversation. But if, for example, truth in sentencing was repealed, then we wouldn't have to have that conversation, because then, the parole board could make those determinations to send folks home early, right? And these are folks too that we advocated to come home. We were talking about medically frail, those that are most at risk. And I guess the saddest part is, you know, there was a juvenile lifer that had served over 30 years, and he finally had been given his freedom. And he died weeks before he was able to come home at Macomb Corrections, right here on 26th. You know, it was a man that I had met over the years. And so, you know, it was just, it was really disheartening, you know, under those circumstances. So, you know, a lot of this just doesn't need to happen, I guess, right? For lack of a better way of saying it. It's just, we can do better, and repealing truth in sentencing is something that should happen. We look at county jails across the country, they only serve 85% of their time. You know, this is something that, and we can look at states where there is truth in sentencing, and you don't have to see the parole board. So you do the minimum and you just go home automatically, where in Michigan, we had to put our own twist on it, where you still got no good time. You had to do 100% time, and you still had to see a parole board member, because we have this indeterminate sentence, minimum, maximum, which means everything in between is up to the parole board. So if you have a simple possession, let's say you have a possession of cocaine, you get sentenced to 1 year to 20 years in the Michigan Department of Corrections. Well, after that 1 year, you see the parole board, they could literally flop you 17, 18 more times. They could take you right to the 20-year mark. It has happened. I had a client once that served every day of his sentence. He maxed out, and when he came home, he had no services available to him. Why? Because he wasn't on parole. So this kind of timeline here show you 1857, first good time statute. 1893, prison code includes good time. We go to 53. Correction code allows for parole eligibility after minimum sentences less the good time allowances. So in 78, it came up with Proposal B, which passed. It was good time credits are available for those convicted of specific crimes, which basically meant if you were convicted of a violent crime, sexual crime, once again, you were excluded. 1982, they decided that wasn't such a good idea to exclude those folks. So what we'll do is we'll have disciplinary credits, which meant you could earn up to 5 days per month. You could earn disciplinary time, right? And you could then lose that time if you got a ticket for, you know, a misconduct. So in 87, the disciplinary credit, you know, these different reforms. And then when we get to truth in sentencing, and it asked for those for violent crimes. 2000, we went to nonviolent. So now that just simply means whether you have a violent or nonviolent crime in the state of Michigan from the year, what was it? Yeah, December 15th of 2000, you do every day of your time. Even for nonviolent. So you tell me how that is supposed to keep us safer. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't make sense. None of this truly makes sense. So why should it be repealed? Real easy, because it doesn't work. We know that punitive and disciplinary focuses, we don't garner the results we want. Truth in sentencing, it shows here on average, they served 88% of their sentence. Now look at today, 127% is average. So what does that mean? You know, if you have a 10-year sentence and you're adding another 27%, I'm doing how much time? I mean, that nobody in the country quite does it as bad as we do, honestly. So I was really fortunate to get out only having to serve 100% of my time and not getting a continuance and having to do an additional 12, 18, or 24 months, which are all things the parole board do. And so it also would take away a lot of these programs that restricts folks from getting them until they have a certain amount of time left, which people probably don't know. Like, so if I'm a violent person, which the part I was because I was convicted of a violent crime, although I didn't hurt anybody, and I don't believe I'm a violent person. I did get convicted of a violent crime. I would not be eligible and wasn't eligible for programming until the last couple of years, really, that I was able to, before I was scheduled to be released, because of this waiting list, and they don't think you need it. Well, why wouldn't you give somebody skills and tools to practice it while you're on the inside in this, you know, environment that isn't pro-social? Give us pro-social skills and tools, and then allow us to practice them, and then come home, you know, with these becoming habits. We don't do that. We wait to the end. We give you some programming there, and then we say, okay, now you can go home. You're fixed. It just doesn't work that way. So we talked a little bit about, you know, truth in sentencing during the pandemic. 15% of the people today in prison are eligible for parole. 15% are also serving life sentences. So that leaves 70% of the people right now that are ineligible to be reviewed, to even be considered to come home. Why? Because of truth in sentencing. So these are the reasons that, you know, we believe these reforms need to happen. Again, for 15 years, you know, also the victim of violent crime, survivor of violent crime myself. You know, I lost a daughter about 18 months ago to a violent crime. My 26-year-old. So I get it on both ends. You know, I don't just speak from the lens of somebody that was formerly incarcerated and just feels that everybody should be let out. You know, I believe that everybody deserves the opportunity to redeem themselves and show that they can come home, right? But I also feel the onus is on us as a community to create that pathway, to create that space. So, you know, I'd like to stay in touch with folks. We have this great e-newsletter that goes out monthly that gives updates on the bills that I talked about, the different packages, but also, you know, stories that are happening, you know, with folks that are coming home. Usually they highlight somebody that's returned, that's doing some kind of good work in the community. You know, you can like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel where we have really cool videos we'll do. We also, we've done quite a series of webinars that are on there as well on all these topics where we go a little more in depth. So if you want to learn more about truth in sentencing, the clean slate package, the governor's task force recommendations, a lot of that information can be found on our YouTube channel as well as our website. For those that do Twitter, every Tuesday we do a Twitter storm in relation to Let My People Go, LETMI for Michigan, People Go, that's aimed at the governor, lieutenant governor, Heidi Washington, director of the DOC, and we do that from 1 to 3 every Tuesday. Because the reality is that, you know, as progressive as our governor is and as many great things as she's doing to manage this pandemic, the reality is that she's not doing sufficient to men and women that are incarcerated in prison. She's been very quiet on that front. Her administration's been very quiet on that front. And so, yeah, the Twitter storm is to kind of let them know that that's just not okay. And, you know, we should be doing more for folks that are at risk during this time. So I hope I didn't go over time. I thought I did okay. I appreciate you all giving me this time and this space. Yeah. Any questions? Dog. Okay.
I'm just wondering who makes up parole boards? Like, is it your peers like it is for a jury, or is it like
Now,
specialists?
you would hope that would be the case, but the parole board, so I'm glad you asked that because that's a great question. The parole board is, they're appointed by the governor and there's different terms for different number of people. Some do a 2-year, I think some do a 1 year, and some do 4. But they're all appointed. And here's the problem with that. Some of them, are at times law enforcement. Like there's a state trooper that was on there that had gotten injured and was no longer able to be a state trooper. So they thought it'd be a great idea. And he was injured, on duty, for him to be a parole board member and to decide if men and women should come home from prison. Ex-prosecutors, that is an area that we believe the governor can do better. We need more social workers, folks, substance use professionals. Dare I say, I would love to see somebody that was formerly incarcerated that be on there, right? To be able to help inform, I think, hey buddy, I think the dog's getting impatient with me, sorry. That's some place that we can do a lot better because it should reflect the community. You're absolutely right. It should reflect, we did get a clergy on there a few years ago from Detroit that was appointed, actually by then Governor Snyder. But yeah, let's get more folks involved in it than just ex-police, and law enforcement, lawyers, like, I don't think that in those instances they necessarily are the best folks. So great question, C. I seen Austin, you had your hand up, and then there was one other hand.
Yeah, so you talked about like the system of earning time and losing that time. Like you can get tickets and things in prison, or you kind of.
So yeah, it's a good question. So there are some rules, right? And, for example, okay, let me let him out this door real quick before we go crazy. I think he just hears my grandson upstairs and he just wants to go play. But yeah, there's like out of place, right? If I don't go to a call out, I'm supposed to be somewhere, say the library. I signed up to go to the library to get some books. Guess what? I lose track of time. Why? Because I don't have a watch and there's no clock in my cell. So I don't make it to the call out. They write me a ticket. I do a few days sanction, maybe lose privileges, loss of privileges. I can't watch my TV. And if I was getting good time, then they would take that as well. Right. But, there's all different kinds, having a bad day, officer says something, I give a little witty comeback, I'm insubordinate. They could write me a ticket for, a variety of things. They give you a direct order, something you don't want to do. Well, I'm telling you, you're going to do it. I'm giving you a direct order. You say, well, I'm still not doing it. And then again, it's a misconduct. So those are all things. And under, I guess one thing I didn't mention under truth in sentencing is when you get those tickets, that can actually add time. So then they've computed how many days you should actually do past your first out date based on these tickets. Problem is, I could have caught the ticket like, when I first came to prison, and it's 12 years later and I'm not the same person, and an extra 45 days for something I did 12 years ago. Yeah, pretty crazy. Welcome to Michigan. We're second in the country. We've put more juveniles in prison for life without the possibility of parole than anybody else in the country outside of Philadelphia. Which is kind of, the fact that it's the city of brotherly love and they put more kids in prison for life, you kind of like, you just got to shake your head. And then there's Michigan right behind them. So that's equally Anything else? Good.
Do you guys do any like volunteer opportunities?
Yeah, thanks for
Or-
asking, Matt. That's awesome. We do, and we're looking at new ways, obviously, amongst COVID, to kind of figure out ways we can get folks involved. And so one way is similar to like what we're doing today. You know, folks can contact, say, 20, 30 friends and say, hey, I'm going to host, an online Zoom on criminal justice reform, helping to get this message out there. But we'll also be doing actionable items in relation to calling legislators, whether it's a state rep or whether it's your state senator, in relation to if this legislation moves to the Senate, to the Judiciary Committee. So there's opportunities there. We used to have obviously more as far as door knocking and going into neighborhoods. And we're kind of assessing how this is just going to look amongst this COVID. But yeah, there'll be opportunities that if you sign up for the newsletter as well, where we put a lot of those call to actions out. Yeah. You're muted, Matt.
Sorry. One of the things I'm interested in personally is just working more like volunteering with people who are incarcerated or like going through some kind of rehab. So I'm not against like volunteering with like the more activism side, but I'm curious if you have any recommendations about like actually working with the people in the system.
I do, absolutely. There's a great deal of orgs out there. Are you from which area?
I live in Oakland County, like Auburn Hills.
You froze. I heard I live and then it like skipped.
Oh, I live in Auburn Hills.
Oh, okay, yeah. There's an organization called A Brighter Way, which is led by a gentleman named Cosine Welch, which is formerly incarcerated, and they work specifically with men and women coming home. The Youth Justice Fund also works with men and women coming home that were juvenile lifers, only juvenile lifers, or I take that back, or juveniles when they were entered into the system so they could still be younger, do a lot of mentoring. Those are two that off the top of my head, there's, and we could connect after. I could connect you with some other orgs, but those are two that are both really good orgs, and they're both led by formerly incarcerated. So the Youth Justice Fund is ran by a guy named Aaron Kinzel, who's a professor at U of M Dearborn now, but he's also formerly incarcerated.
That sounds awesome. Thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions? Thank you. I appreciate you guys' time, seriously.
All right, so let's send it over to Austin, who's going to give us our monthly address.
So I imagine that you had to walk uphill both ways through snow or something to get to the concerts back then, right? That's how it.
Yeah, I had to carry a polar bear on my back.
Kids these days will just never understand.
No, you just you call somebody, they come and pick you up. They drop you off at the front door. You call them, they pick you up and bring you back. They don't remember what it's like having to walk through the streets of Detroit, finding your car after a concert or after a hockey game.
I think actually my mom and I did that once or twice. It's like,
see, that's what
we
did back in the day.
Especially when you take off before the game ends so that you can try to find it early and get out before the traffic hits.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Fun fact about Julius Arena was that, most people that have been there, that they only have two exits. The west, Gordie Howe, and the east by the river, which 90% of the people would go in and out from the Gordie Howe entrance. So, come on, knock it off. And so everybody always tried to rush out that door. Like when they were designing it, did they not think that people would want to get out any other way. It's just
Right.
it just kind of like pushed everybody together, and it was a real shit show. Another interesting fact about Julius Arena is that they knew that it was going to be a hockey arena. Okay, that's what it was specifically for, and then also for other things like concerts and stuff. So it was going to be a sports venue. They had professionals drop the blueprints. The city approved the blueprints. The construction people, they knew that they were building a hockey arena, built the thing. They went to do a walkthrough, and this is what happened. Hey, where's the press box? I went back to the blueprints. Nobody bothered putting in a press box in a sports arena. So they literally took out like some rows in the back, and they built a makeshift press box and just put it up and attached it to the ceiling. And from when did we open? 1979 until it closed 2017. Yeah, 2017 it closed. That's where the broadcasters sat and broadcast. So, yeah. I'm done talking about inventing about Julius Arena.
All right, so I'll jump into the monthly address. So sitting here, we're listening to Rick, and he's talking about how COVID is hitting the people in prison and things like that, and they're letting them out, which is good. But I think it was there. I mean, you can correct me here, Rick, if I'm wrong about this, but they were kind of slow to react about letting people out, and in the meantime, it's just raging through the jails and the prisons, and it's hurting people, and so it's already kind of punishing them more than they're being punished, and it's exacerbating the problems that we already had in society and in prisons, and I think in a lot of ways it's bringing to light the fact that that we have so many people in prison, and it's kind of pushing us to ask like why that's the case, and why our solution to criminality is incarceration, and if there's better ways. And I think one of my favorite quotes ever, pretty much, is always the Angela Davis quote, where she says, "Prisons do not disappear social problems, they disappear human beings. Homelessness, unemployment, drug addiction, mental illness, and illiteracy are only a few of the problems that disappear from public view when the human beings contending with them are relegated to cages." And I think that our society needs more support, not punishment. Our society needs to be fixing the problems that push people into prisons, not going along with the rapidly expanding prison industrial complex. It's so bad that even in 2015, both Hillary Clinton and Senator Rand Paul said pretty much the same thing when they said it's a stark fact in the United States that it's a stark fact that the United States has less than 5% of the world's population, and yet almost 25% of the world's total prison population. The numbers today are much higher than they were 30 or even 40 years ago, despite the fact that crime is at historic lows. And Senator Rand Paul even adds that not only does the current overpopulated, underfunded system hurt those incarcerated, it also digs deeper into the pockets of taxpaying Americans, which Rick was saying earlier with the $150 a day to house someone over a $100 bill. I think that as a society, we need to begin talking about the roots of criminality rather than and what we can do to prevent it. In doing so, we may not only spare the victims of crime, but also the victims of society who commit crimes. We cannot seriously engage with viable solutions so long as we keep locking people up and pretending that solves the problem. As another one of my favorite authors writes, Emma Goldman, she says, "Every society has the criminals it deserves." Now, I don't know about you guys, but I get mad about a lot of things, but being angry can really only get you so far. It can only motivate you so much before you actually have to start creating something and doing things which are alternatives and which actually help people and help this world. And I think that this is what Rick is doing. I mean, I'd say that he's taking his personal experiences, he's going out into the world with them, and he's creating the support systems and institutions that he wants to see and that he knows will help those who were and are in his situation. With so much division and strife, there's nothing more encouraging than to see people coming together to help out vulnerable populations. Helping formerly incarcerated people get jobs and get on with their lives after imprisonment through like the Clean Slate Act and things like that, I think that's creating a better society. And it's taking a restorative approach to justice rather than a punitive one. it limits the punishment so that people can come out and adjust more easily back into our society. Rick talked about juveniles, and I think it's refreshing to see people treating juveniles as people and as people who are redeemable. And I think that's a really nice thing that Rick is pushing for us, pointing out that we incarcerate juveniles for life more than any other state, pretty much, maybe besides Florida. And when we're competing with Florida, that we're messing up. I don't think actually, Rick, that you chatted about this one this time. It was on the Zoom call 2 weeks ago, but the educating people that, like, when they're awaiting trial and stuff, that they can still vote and things like that. And I think you can vote after you're out too, right, in Michigan?
Yeah, so as a felon, you can vote, and if you're housed in the county jail and you're awaiting trial, you can vote then as well, pre-conviction. And you're right. The one thing I wanted to kind of highlight that you just lifted up too was, when it comes to COVID in prison, if you test positive for it, or if you have symptoms, what they automatically do is they put you into segregation. So they take all your personal property from you. They put you in the hole, which is segregation. And so part of the problem was, because they approached it like they do everything from a punitive standpoint, is people were getting symptoms and not feeling well and not really sure, am I just not feeling well? Is it this? Is it that? And now they're not going because why? You don't want to voluntarily go to the hole and lose everything, right? And so then people aren't reporting how they're feeling because, again, we go at it from this punitive standpoint. So the DOC has been horrible in this. They sent 2 men that they had tested and believed were negative to an institution that had 0% COVID cases. Problem was both of these men actually tested positive for COVID-19, and then they transferred them to a prison that up until that point had no cases. So they put these 2 men there, right? So there was a lot of problem. Obviously, it was initially brought in by staff, and coincidentally, that's who doesn't want to wear masks, the staff. So, somebody that's been in prison 5, 10 years, hell, even a year, they're not the one that's got this, right? So we know it's coming from staff, and when staff are saying, I'm not going to wear a mask, and you can't make me, and the union's backing them, what do? Right? Like they're immediately putting other folks at risk. And we know that this affects a population of folks that have poor nutrition, poor health, poor health care. And if you look at prison, that's it. Shitty food, shitty health care, welcome pandemic. Like, come on. So right. Thank you for lifting that up. But that's a big part of what's going on in the prisons. And they're dedicating whole units to housing these folks, and we've had over 60 deaths inside Michigan prisons alone.
And if I understand, that's the reason that you're doing the Let My People Go. I mean, these people are literally trapped there. I mean, they can't social distance.
My last 5 years, I was housed in a level 1, right? I started out in a level 4, which is just under max high security. Worked my way down. Level 1, essentially I'm in this gigantic pole barn. I got 80 people on this side. You got 80 people on this side. So you got 160 men plus staff in this pole barn with half walls, no doors. You got ceiling fans and some windows, but no air outside of that. In a 10 by 10 room, you have 8 adult men occupying it, sleeping there with all of their property. So you got bunk beds, and then bunk beds, and then a bunk bed, and a bunk bed, and it's like this little horseshoe and a horseshoe. And you know what I mean? It's just, you can't put 8 men in a 10 by 10. I mean, how do you social 6 feet? You can't. You don't have 3 feet. You know what I mean? Right. Yeah, 6 inches. It seems like some days, but this is what and these were built as temporary living facilities. The only problem is they were built in the 80s.
Yeesh.
Yeah.
So what's the law now? That just goes into effect this Monday. Indoors and outdoors, if you're not wearing a mask, you can be fined $500 or.
Was that actually that passed?
Yeah, but I announced it.
Yeah, as of Monday, I think it's a $500 fine if you're in a public area not wearing a mask.
Outside or in?
Indoors and outdoors. Indoors and outdoors.
Wow.
It goes into effect tonight at 12:01.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm on top of the news all the time. Monitor all that. So, and that's because of the huge outbreaks in the southern states. Yes, we've had an increase here in Michigan, but not nearly as the amount of increase in
I think I just saw
California,
that yesterday.
Arizona.
Like Florida had 15,000 new cases or something, like alone, just the one state.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, that was pretty much all I had to say for the monthly address. I just wanted to say, I did want to note that I think that I'm personally pretty encouraged by Rick. Oh, yeah, there you are. And I mean, like, I know from the conversations we've had, you've really, through your own strong will, I think, pulled together what you could, and made yourself a better person. And I know that we talked about things like people who are in there for life, and it's like, what kind of encouragement do they have, to be better people, and to do the programs that you took, and to do the teaching and take the classes and all that stuff. And it's encouraging to see someone be able to go through all that and come out. And I'm just amazed, as you pointed out, that somehow, I don't know, legislators thought that just pure time alone would like fix something, like that just being in a place would be enough. So I'm glad that you're doing the work and initiating the conversations that change people's mindset about just locking someone away for 15 years and thinking that's going to fix the problem. So that's pretty much it.
I will add to, I didn't really introduce the poem earlier, but the poet, if anyone is interested, is Reginald Dwayne Betts. And he wrote a poetry collection called Felon that came out in 2019. And he's also got a memoir and another poetry collection out there. But he was convicted of carjacking at the age of 16, tried as an adult, sentenced to 8 years in prison and 14 months in solitary confinement ultimately. And eventually fell into writing poetry and then studying law at Yale. So he's a really good poet, and I would recommend him.
I think she bought his book or something last night.
Yeah, I might be.
So, but, cool. Back to you, Anthony.
All right. So we are a nonprofit. None of us take a paycheck. None of us get paid anything, but things do cost money. So if you can, remember that the greatest nation in the world is donation. We appreciate that. Lots of ways to do it. We have things coming up. There's a July 15th, we have the Help Often Committee, the book club on the 25th, social media committee on the 27th, and we're going to end the month with a knowledge session, bartending insider tips, tricks, stories, and more. I'll be doing that, and it'd be great if you tune into everything, really. Great participation, because participation is always free. And bring a friend. All right, thank you for that. So, does anybody have anything else to add today? If not, we hope to see you at another event, and especially the next assembly on August 9th. So, thank you everybody for tuning in.
Awesome. We're gonna put the link that Rick just mentioned too. I found it on YouTube here, Living on LOP. So it's in the chat. If you guys want to, you can save the messages in the chat. You go down to the it's like the 3 little dots next to file, and there's more, and you can click save chat, and it'll make a little text file for you. So you can save that to your computer for afterward.
I never knew how to do that till now. Thank you.
Yeah. I keep learning new things about Zoom every time we go through this. So. But yeah, so there's the YouTube video channel for the Living on LOP.
Cool. Yeah, they're coming to do mine today. I'm going to be talking about time management.
Ooh,
Yeah.
Cool.
Pretty cool.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining, everyone.
All right, take care. Stay safe.
All right, you too. Yeah, bye-bye.